When was the time when the idea came to you and you thought, well, maybe I could serve this need, I could fulfill this need for people?
Yeah. So just winding back to 2011, um, my co-founder. I did have a co-founder, which really was a big part of the reason. His experience was a big part of the reason we decided to start this business. So in 2011, myself based in Denver, my co-founder Nick based in Florida. We were meeting in Scottsdale for a golf trip. But at that time, Nick had to go from Florida to New York, Scottsdale. He was going to New York for another work engagement, prior to Shipsticks. Shipsticks didn't exist. Well, he didn't want to bring his clubs to New York and then Scottsdale. So he walked into a local logistics provider, shipped his bag from Florida to Scottsdale, proceeded on with his business trip to New York, met me, walks into the pro shop of the club that we were playing in, and his clubs are there. So that night at dinner, started having the conversation. He shared with his experience, his journey, the convenience that it enabled effortless travel. But at the same time, the cost of it was not competitive, meaning it was way too expensive going back 12, 13 years ago to bring that, we'll say, to the masses or bring that to the broader community. So really, it was at the same time the airlines were starting to charge for checked baggage. So the overall thought was, can we create this convenience that Nick just experienced, but also be competitive from a pricing perspective with the airlines, understanding we may be a little bit more from a ground shipment perspective, but the added convenience is well worth the enablement of that effortless travel, the convenient travel. So really, it started at a night in 2011 in Arizona playing golf, and subsequently from there went through the process of underwriting the business. And when I say underwriting, it was more of like, hey, we think we can do this. Let's go out and try. So I don't think there was any fancy sophistication of underwriting or doing diligence in different ways. We did that, but broadly speaking, they're just big assumptions.
So then this time period in 2011 that you came up with the idea, do you remember a point in time where you started the business? And obviously, whenever you're having a new venture like this, there was no path to follow. You're creating your own path. And so you have to try this, you have to try that. And as anybody who started a new business knows, there's points where most of the time you're thinking, this is not going to work. And you have to fight those thoughts. Was there a moment, though, when it clicked and you said, you know what? I think this might work. I think we're going to be able to make this thing really work.
Yeah, we did. I'll loop back to that answer. I'll tell you a little story prior. But yeah, there was kind of an aha moment. And really not because we did anything, but we were right place, right time with the right service, and almost got a little lucky, in my opinion, or convinced somebody that we were, capable enough to serve them. So when we started the business, in early 2012, we really would go from, we'd call golf facility or pro shop to pro shop, just sharing it with owners of clubs, general managers of clubs, head professionals, that we have this value add service to their members and guests. There's no cost to them. They can even make a few dollars of incentive of bags coming and leaving their facilities, helping with that effortless travel from the members and guests perspective. So we did that for the first year and a half, relatively successfully, right? Nick and myself were and are big golfers. So, we relied on some existing relationship network with our buddy and just really almost traveled the country, meeting golf pros, general managers, and owners, sharing this concept, this service that wasn't necessarily, in anyone's head at the time. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to, I think, early 2013, as we all know, one of the premier resorts in the country, that being Bandon Dunes, is relatively remote, relatively hard to access, right? You fly to San Francisco, you fly to Portland, you hop on puddle jumpers. There's always connecting flights. How do you get there? Well, on the puddle jumpers, when they get overweight, the first thing they take off are oversized baggage, which is golf clubs. Mm-hmm. So Bandon Dunes had the problem of I shouldn't say all, a high percentage of their customers showing up on showing up on property without golf clubs, because the airlines, when I say intentionally due to weight or other reasons, had to leave them on to the next flight when they had the right capacity to take them. So we almost, I'll say, convinced Bandon Dunes they had a need, but at the same time we convinced them that we were this company that could really solve their problems. And I don't know if we thought we really had the capabilities or the scale at that time to solve all their problems. And, we're never going to solve all their problems. But we were able to grow with them. They gave us the chance. And, 12, 13 years later, they're still one of our 2 or 3 largest partners. We have great relationships. We've enhanced a lot of guest stays and, created effortless travel for their guests. So it's really going back to that 2013 period that we're like, oh, okay, we kind of have this. And just to be clear from a timeline perspective, Nick, my co-founder, he was running the business day to day. I was more, we'll say macro, board, directional, starting really more in that 2013 as we started to transition out of, okay, we have something and we aren't just knocking on doors like we were for that first year or two, really starting to build it.
So then when you started to get involved with it more and more with the project, were you surprised? Were you surprised by the fact that it was taking off as quickly as it was, or perhaps were you surprised at something else?
Well, meaning going back to the 2013 period? Yeah, I mean, listen, I always try to view things from the customer perspective, right? I'm a consumer myself, right? So I always sort of think about, like, is that something that I would use? Is that something that makes my life, helps my efficiency, convenience in traveling? And that answer was like, yes, 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 right? Enabling this travel, like, enabled me to, stand by flights, not get there as late, not having to wait 30 minutes for your oversized bag coming off of a carousel, renting smaller cars if you're going on a guy's golf trip, or, you're with 4, 6, 8 people because your bags are waiting for you. So, like, I just saw that value chain as my own customer, being a customer myself. And so did I think, was I surprised by it? Not really, because I really see and felt myself the value that it brought, to the traveling golf.
So let's talk about the customer's perspective. To me, the things that stand out is the concept is very, very clear. From the name Shipsticks to the idea, oh, they're going to take my clubs. We know what a hassle is. You just talked about that. Second thing is the value. Like, I don't have to drag that bag through off the Uber, then to the, check-in or and then I don't have to take it off. So there's that value component to it too. The third thing is the price. Your price is fairly comparable to a checked bag nowadays for that most airlines charge. So that's kind of clear. And then fourth is the customer service. So I mentioned that I recently just used your service 2 days ago. And when I shipped the clubs to Florida, from Chicago to Florida, I screwed up. I put the wrong tag, the wrong printout on the bag. I put the one that's supposed to be coming back. So okay. I got an email that said, hey, we picked up your clubs. And then I saw, wait a minute, they're taking them back to my house. And so you kind of caught that. And so I immediately panicked. I called your customer service. I talked to a woman, and she calmed me down and said, when they come back, put a sign on the door that says, hey, I got to talk to you. And then we were able to change the tag, send the bag out. It got there perfectly in Florida at the right time. So all of these things worked out, right? So the clarity of the product, the value, the customer service, the price, you're hitting on all of these points. And at this stage, 13, 14 years into it, it's like an of course moment, right? Of course, we need Shipsticks. We need a service like this. But obviously, nobody had done it before. What do you think was the case? Like you said, there's a little bit of luck that's involved that you got to this point. But you also had to go through COVID, which I'm sure, that time during the pandemic wasn't easy. What are the challenges, the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome during this time period?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it from COVID, right? Like, specifically, if we're going to focus on one time period. But I think broadly speaking, I would equate it to changing habit, right? As a golfer, what are our habits? We want to go on a golf trip, so we call our buddies, we book a hotel, we book an airline, and now hopefully we're part of that habit in making a decision. Are we going to ship our clubs, or are we not? So like that, I hate to use the word disruption, but it's really like habit changing. And I really equate it to something like Uber Eats, right? Pre-COVID, at least for me, was I ordering, whether it was fast food or high-end, dinner food or groceries via Uber Eats? The answer was no. But post-COVID, Uber had made it so easy for us and so accessible that now we will pay $20 more to go get our to have a Chick-fil-A delivered to us versus driving 3 minutes. And prior to that, we never thought we would do so. So, the biggest obstacle is always, I think, changing habit, but making sure the process along the way between our website, between our customer care team, between the pricing, the experience really enables all of that in a cohesive way. So you're really looking and say, okay, if it is $10 more than checking a bag on an airline, like that value I really see and feel and experience.
So the one thing that comes to mind is anytime there's disruption, like you mentioned, and changing of habits, there's a cost that comes with that, right? It's a cost to acquire these customers. It's a cost to try to get your message out in front of people and say, we have this solution to this problem that you all have. But on the flip side, I would imagine the lifetime value of a customer for you is fairly high. So was there a difficulty in causing this disruption or getting in front of people when you first started to try to branch out?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it, right? There's acquisition costs, and there's hopefully lifetime value that, once you acquire the customer, they really are enjoying and finding use of the service. Like that value they continue to grow with us. But did we have trouble? You always have trouble, right? You always want more customers. We kind of have two main channels, what we would call partner channels, and that's the country clubs and resorts that we really started with and are still sort of, I'd say, the anchor of our business. Then we have more direct, what we'd call B2C channels, which we acquire customers through all the different channels within B2C. That being social media, that being with SEM search, that being with TV, that being with other marketing partnerships. So we really kind of have two broader channels, two segments of our customer journey, and then hopefully we create enough value for the customers that they continue to come back and continue to utilize our service.
So bringing up the B2C component of it, any idea what's this percentage shifts between the your B2B, which would be the courses in that, versus the people you get directly from outreach or your website or anything like that?
Well, it's interesting because lots of times you might acquire a customer from the first use in a B2C channel, but then they start using it at their club in the facility. Mm-hmm. In the same way, on the flip side, right? They might use it at the club the first time, and then like, oh wow, this is so easy. I'm sitting in my bed at night. I'm going to book my shipment for tomorrow morning. I don't have to call the club. So they really support each other. So we don't necessarily like break them out. And from a percentage basis, from that B2B and B2C, because they're so interchangeable in so many experiences.
So I think I had read on your website, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you shipped over 3 million golf clubs at this stage?
Yep.
And so that's a massive amount of data that you've obviously collected from it. Is there anything that stands out that you've learned from that? Because you have that information that nobody else has. What stands out, like the things that you've learned about shipping and what your customers really value?
Yeah, I'll ask you this question, then I'll answer. You just went to a trip, you just shipped your bag to and from Florida. Is that an annual trip? Is that a one-off trip? Like when you think of your travel habits, are you going certain places or traveling certain weekends throughout the year, whether it's winter, summer, fall, etc.?
Yeah, it's at least one annual. That was an annual type of thing. And then there's typically another trip, say, that is more spontaneous.
Yeah, and on the annual trip, is that typically the same weekend or the same time period every year?
Usually time period, because our windows here for golf in Chicago are restricted, right? So it's November to February, March, where we can't
Sure.
play outside. So yeah, it's the same time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things when you reference data is we
Mhm.
see so much consistency
Mm,
in time of year and even weekend of year and
mhm.
even destination of where people are going. And like you said, a lot of times there's others sprinkled in other trips, but if we look at a broad profiles and they're traveling every President's Weekend from New York to Florida, and it's just like clockwork, right? They book their shipments 10 days before they leave, and it gets picked up. They go for President's Weekend, and it gets picked up on that Tuesday after. So I think like the consistency of the consumer and probably how important golf is that people really plan a lot of their, we'll say, social and family calendar around going on golf trips, and understanding the complexities of life, right? Work, family, trying to still be social and play golf. Like this is just slotted for a lot of people that this weekend, every year, this is what we do. And we could be, a variety of types of people and groups, but like that's on their calendar. And just like birthdays are, we go on the golf trip every year.
It makes a lot of sense. It kind of segues into the next question I was asked you. How is technology, obviously artificial intelligence is changing everything. And you just talked about something that I'm sure you're probably using AI models to kind of reference all these trips, but how has technology improved the way Shipsticks and your company does business?
Yeah, I think it's a loaded question, because in a lot of different areas we have and will continue to hopefully elevate innovation and technology. I think one of them really is just the user experience, right? Of actually booking a shipment and in going through the flow and continuing to make it as easy and effortless as possible for the consumer to create as little friction as you can to create between us and we'll say the destination. But also, when we think about, we have an amazing partnership with really all three logistics providers, FedEx, UPS, and DHL, but specifically with FedEx, where we're using a new technology called SensoWare within our shipments. And it's effectively an Apple AirTag, but only for FedEx's eyes. So when we think about tracking, we think about recovery, we think about, God forbid something happens, right? The ability that technology has to help, recover it before it becomes a problem. It might have missed a scan, which happens every now and again, but a lot of times we're able to rectify that and change that course and update that shipment prior to the customer ever knowing it might have missed a scan. So like technology really kind of lives everywhere, not to mention from a data and a marketing perspective, understanding different seasonalities and habits of existing consumers and really partners for that matter.
So I'd like to finish up with two more questions. First one, can you talk a little about your ship in place service and how that augments with Shipsticks?
Yeah. So starting with 2011 when we started the business, ultimately what's led us to Ship and Play is following our customer. And what we started off as we shared was people shipping golf clubs, and then through their golf clubs, they're like, "Wow, I'm shipping my golf clubs. I'd like to ship my luggage." So we added luggage to Shipsticks platform, given the ability to ship sticks and luggage to completely bypass the whole check baggage process. And then, what do golfers do? They probably ski. So we have a brand, Ship Skis, which is the same thing, following our customer. Can we ship our skis? We love shipping our golf clubs, but can we ship our skis and have the same experience? So skis and luggage. And then ultimately, Ship and Play, which is a brand new brand, really will be, we'll say, the umbrella brand for Shipsticks, Ship Skis, and then we have a business, Ship Camps. And Ship Camps are kids going to overnight camp in the Northeast, Midwest, and really all over the country. But being in Chicago, you probably are very familiar or know of a lot of the camps in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan area. And it's the same thing coming from our parents. Well, gosh, I'm sending my 8-year-old with 2 duffels, 2 trunks to camp. these bags are bigger than them. How can we more efficiently get them up there? So we've really followed the customer, and that leads us to Ship and Play, which can be, we'll say, the one-stop shop for all of your shipping experiences or all of your travel experiences, to give you more occasions to utilize our service outside of our core ship sticks, outside of our core skis. We're always going to be ship sticks to golfers. We're always going to be ship skis to skiers. But when we think about all the other occasions, whether it's summer travel with your family, whether it's European vacations, whether it's cruises, like, what is a brand that really embodies who we are? And we think Ship and Play, because play means a variety of different things to everybody. To us, it might be golf. To others, it might be, going to Europe and touring, going on a bucket list European trip or going on a cruise line. So it really kind of encaptures everything. And to use another Uber example, future state, when you go on Uber's app or website today, you can go to Uber Transportation, right, which is cars, or Uber Eats, which we referenced, or Uber Groceries or boxes. Future state for us, when you go to one of our brands, you can go to Ship and Play. And do you want to ship sticks? Do you want to ship skis? Do you want to ship luggage? Like, that's sort of the all-encompassing brand architecture that we're really aiming for. But just to hit the punchline, it's really been led by our customer.
So, and that's a perfect segue to the last question. It kind of begins with brand affinity. It's really hard to develop that brand affinity. I think that the thing that you probably have going for you is that shipping is not easy from a customer's perspective, certainly not from your perspective, so that when you make my life easier, and when I do something like I did, where I put the wrong label on, and your customer support people help me, I develop affinity. Like, oh, this is you got my back. Now I have your back. And you were talking about the different technology you use for tracking of bags, whether it's through FedEx or any of the other companies that you work with. There's all these things that kind of lend itself to developing brand affinity, because you're helping me, like you're helping the customer. What's been the most rewarding feedback that you've received from customers throughout these 13, 14, 15 years that you've been involved with?
Yeah, good, really good question. And I think you touched on it, but just to double down on it, would be when things don't go right, how we handle it, how we respond. Ultimately, use the word brand affinity, but some of our most loyal customers have come to us in a suboptimal first experience, but going above and beyond. And what we talk about, like from a mentality perspective, above and beyond, and really delight the customer, not just, customer satisfaction, because that's meeting expectations, but going above and beyond and really delighting them. I think when we think about who we are as a business, we really want to differentiate on service, on ongoing, and that delight. So we've had over the tenure of our business, we've had a lot of things that haven't gone right. We can only control some of those, but we always can control our interactions with the customer. And not that it always ends perfectly, but they know how much we care, and we are doing everything we can to upgrade that shipment to get it in time for your bucket list golf trip. Or on the few cases that things break, we are moving quickly, refunding the money from a claims perspective, like in a timely manner. Occasionally things break, and it's just how you handle some of those suboptimal experiences really has been the most rewarding, because that's what we can control. That, at the end of the day, sometimes there's weather and bags get delayed, and that just happens. We can't leave. You couldn't leave Chicago in a sleet storm, which you might be having today. But we can communicate, and we can impact just how we treat, and that transparent process with the customer, I feel like is a big differentiator, and something I'm really proud of the team that they bring, and have all day, every day.